Well, in the context of a global pandemic and all that's going on in the financial markets, it seemed like talking a little bit about stress today made a whole lot of sense. So, for the sake of brevity and time and attention spans, we're going to talk about three areas of stress, and we're going to break them up into separate clips. The first one is, what is stress and what's its general relationship to performance? The second, how does stress impact our information processing systems and ultimately our decision making and our performance? And lastly, what can we do about it? What are the protective factors that we can engage that will steel us or gird us against the degradation to our performance based on stress? So let's start off with the first. What is stress? Well, there are at least three ways that we have historically looked at stress. One, known as the stimulus-based model. This is the proverbial stuff happens bumper sticker, right? And that stuff is the stress or stressors that enter our life. The second is a response-based model, and it argues that we have affective or emotional states, cognitive states, and behavioral conditions that all interact, and that our reaction, our affect or emotion, our cognitive thinking about a situation, and our behavior are really what defines stress. And the last is a transactional model. It recognizes that stuff does happen, but that our cognitive appraisal, our affective response, and ultimately our behavior interacting with the world around us defines what really it means to be under stress, to experience a stressor. So what is the overall relationship between stress and performance? Perhaps the most widely accepted and discussed framework for understanding this globally is known as the Yerkes-Dodson curve, or the Yerkes-Dodson law. In a nutshell, Yerkes and Dodson found that arousal had a curvilinear relationship with performance in laboratory experiments. In other words, arousal, often thought of synonymously with stress, facilitated performance to a maximal point, after which it tends to degrade performance. While these findings have been replicated across a number of settings with different activities and different types of subjects, the reality is that performance is not always found to be curvilinear in relationship to the amount of stress placed on it. If you look across different studies, what you'll find is in some instances, performance has a positive linear relationship. In other words, as stress increases, performance increases. In other studies, it's just the inverse. Stress has a negative linear relationship on performance. As stress increases, performance degrades or decreases. And in some instances, in fact, it seems as though stress has almost no relationship to performance. So one of the things that Yerkes and Dodson stumbled across in aggregate is when you look at arousal, stimulus, or stress and its impact on a subject performing a task, you'll find both a positive linear relationship, a negative linear relationship, a neutral relationship, and when you combine those three performance curves, you find a general curvilinear shape. So Yerkes and Dodson, extremely important to understand in general the impact of stress on performance, but specifically may not necessarily predict performance on any given type of activity. And in fact, there may be multiple performance curves that are relevant to a different performance task.